Most people know about Custer's last stand. It's one of those moments in American history that gets taught in schools, turned into movies, and argued about endlessly. But here's what rarely gets talked about. What happened to the men who won that day? Because winning didn't save them. If there's one name that survived the battle in the history books, it's Sitting Bull. He was the spiritual and political anchor of the Hunkpapa Lakota, not the kind of leader who fought on the front lines, but the kind who held everything together. Weeks before Little Bighorn, during a Sundance ceremony, he reportedly had a vision of soldiers falling from the sky like grasshoppers. His people took that seriously, and as it turned out, they were right to. After the battle, the U.S. Army wasn't going to let things go. Sitting Bull took his followers north into Canada in 1877, hoping to find some peace. He didn't find much. Hunger and hardship wore his people down, and he eventually came back and surrendered in 1881. 9 years later, in 1890, he was killed during an arrest attempt at Standing Rock. Crazy Horse was, by almost any account, one of the most gifted military minds the Plains tribes ever produced. In the days just before Little Bighorn, he'd already helped turn back General Crook at the Battle of the Rosebud. Then came June 25th, and by all accounts, he was everywhere. Fast, aggressive, leading charges that broke Custer's formations before they ever had a chance to hold. But being a great warrior couldn't stop what was coming. The winters got harder. The buffalo were disappearing. His people were starving. In May 1877, Crazy Horse surrendered at Fort Robinson, Nebraska. That September, during what was supposed to be a routine arrest, a soldier stabbed him with a bayonet. He died that night. Gall was Sitting Bull's right hand in battle, tough, experienced, and respected. But Little Bighorn wasn't just a military event for him. Early in the fighting, during Reno's charge on the village, 2 of his wives and several of his children were killed. Whatever tactical thinking was guiding him before that moment, it was gone. He fought the rest of that day with everything he had. Historians generally credit Gall with helping to collapse Custer's position from multiple sides. After the battle, he followed Sitting Bull into Canada, but eventually surrendered in 1881. What's interesting about Gall is what came next. Unlike some leaders who resisted reservation life bitterly, he encouraged his people to adapt, to farm, to educate their children. He died at Standing Rock in 1894, at around 54 years old. Crow King doesn't get as much attention as Sitting Bull or Crazy Horse, but he was a significant Hunkpapa leader during the battle. Connected to Sitting Bull's camp, respected among the warriors. The historical record on him is thinner than for others, and the details of exactly where he fought that day are less clear. What we do know is that he stayed out on the plains after the battle, one of those leaders who kept moving as the army tightened its grip on the northern territories. The free life on the plains was already ending by then, and Crow King didn't live to see how far things would go. Black Elk was 12 years old at Little Bighorn. He wasn't a warrior yet. He was a kid watching one of the most significant days in his people's history unfold around him. He saw the massive village, the chaos of battle, the soldiers falling. He would spend the rest of his long life carrying that memory. Black Elk became known not as a warrior, but as a spiritual leader and eventually a storyteller. He survived the reservation years, he survived Wounded Knee, and late in his life, he sat down with a writer named John Neihardt and told his story. Black Elk Speaks, published in 1932, remains one of the most powerful Native American memoirs ever written. If you want to understand what that era felt like from the inside, that's the book. Two Moon was a Northern Cheyenne leader who fought alongside the Lakota at Little Bighorn, and he became one of the most valuable eyewitnesses the battle ever produced. His interviews, given years later, gave historians a clear Cheyenne account of what actually happened on that ridge. One thing he emphasized: the fighting against Custer's battalion was fast and chaotic, not the dramatic last stand that paintings and dime novels would later invent. He surrendered in 1877, like so many others, after the Army's relentless winter campaigns made continued resistance nearly impossible. In his later years, people sought him out specifically because he could describe, clearly and calmly, what he had seen. Wooden Leg was 18 years old at Little Bighorn, and he'd already fought at the Rosebud just days before. Young as he was, he paid close attention to the terrain, the movement of warriors, the way the cavalry positions broke down. Decades later, those memories were still sharp. His interviews became essential reading for anyone trying to piece together the Cheyenne experience of that battle. After the wars ended, Wooden Leg made his peace with reservation life in a way that seems genuinely practical rather than defeated. He became an Army scout, and later a tribal judge. He was one of those people who figured out how to be useful in a world that had changed completely around him. White Bull was Sitting Bull's nephew, and one of the more colorful figures to emerge from Little Bighorn. He fought hard that day. Close combat, captured horses, wounds. And for years afterward, stories circulated that he was the one who personally killed George Custer. White Bull himself didn't exactly discourage those stories. Historians have never been able to confirm it, and they probably never will. What's certain is that White Bull, unlike his famous uncle, didn't go to Canada after the battle. He settled on the Cheyenne River Reservation and spent years sharing his recollections with historians and writers. Whatever he did or didn't do that June afternoon, he made sure people knew his version of it. Low Dog was an Oglala Lakota war leader, younger than some of the others, but with real influence over the warriors around him. Before the battle, reportedly, he couldn't imagine the army would be bold enough to attack a village that size. He was almost right. When Reno's men came in, Low Dog was in the fight immediately. He's sometimes connected to the phrase, "This is a good day to die," but historians are careful about that. Battlefield quotes have a way of getting attached to whoever sounds most dramatic in the retelling. What's less disputed is that Low Dog kept resisting after Little Bighorn, longer than some, before hunger and military pressure finally wore him down like it wore down everyone else. He ended his days on a reservation, part of the last generation of Lakota who had known something completely different. Rain in the Face was a Hunkpapa Lakota warrior with a reputation that preceded him on both sides of the Plains conflict. After Little Bighorn, stories spread, helped along by a Longfellow poem of all things, that he had personally killed Captain Tom Custer as revenge for an unjust arrest years earlier. He gave conflicting accounts of it over the years, and historians have never been able to confirm the details either way. He eventually surrendered and settled at Standing Rock, where he spent his later years serving as a judge on the Indian court. He died there in 1905. Near the end, a Lakota physician named Charles Eastman sat with him and wrote down his story, the more honest account of the two versions that exist. The men in this story won one of the most famous battles in American history. Within 15 years, almost all of it was gone. The buffalo, the free movement across the plains, the old way of life. Victory at Little Bighorn turned out to be, in many ways, the beginning of the end. That's the part of the story that doesn't get told nearly enough.